Good evening, and today, of course, is Wednesday, August the 26th, and this is LM Love for the Parker Marchant Show. Thank you for tuning in. We certainly are so sad to have to come to you this evening with news that has absolutely been all over the airwaves today. The tragic shooting of WDBJ 7 News in Roanoke, Virginia's reporter Allison Parker and cameraman Adam Ward. We'd like to begin by just stating just how sorry we are for this occurrence, this senseless act of violence that unfolded live in front of everyone that was watching that particular broadcast. It is unbelievable that anyone would ever have such a heartless way of venting or showing any kind of grievance and just shooting people in cold blood. It's unconscionable. There is no excuse, regardless of whether or not this individual, who shall not be named here on this broadcast, chose to take the lives of two young people who are essentially living their dreams and being productive in society. Allegedly, the gunman was someone who was also a fellow media personality, a possible potential former employee. Regardless of whatever may have occurred when he was doing his stint at the station WDBJ7, it does not really matter, because the truth still remains that there are two people that lost their lives today in front of the nation. And Virginia is not alone in their sense of sorrow and the loss that they feel tonight as we try to make sense out of what was an incredibly senseless act of cold-blooded murder. It's very difficult to live in a world where there are people that think it is okay to act out their grievances, regardless of whether this former reporter was disgruntled or not, as many media outlets are reporting, including HLN's Nancy Grace and Greta Sestrin. It doesn't really matter. There's no proper place for violence, and that is certainly not the way you vent and how you show that you're upset about perhaps whether or not you were overlooked for a promotion. Seriously, this is a frightening occurrence, and it really makes you wonder what is going on in the world that we live in today. Naturally and unfortunately and tragically, this is not the only time such an event has occurred where someone has taken upon him or herself to essentially just murder people with no warning and totally defenseless at the same time. But mainly, we just wanted to come here briefly just to say a few words about a situation that truly does not make any sense, to express our deepest condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of the Parker and Ward families. And also, even though the other person, who again will not be named on this broadcast, committed such a heinous crime, and that was his last act on this earth before he chose to take his own life once law enforcement started to pursue. We are sorry for those members of his family and his friends who seriously must be trying to figure out and trying to understand what happened to someone who really and truly initially showed a lot of promise himself in the world of the media and in particular broadcast journalism. We just don't understand why someone would do this regardless, but truthfully, the gunman's manifesto says, quote, "I've been a powder keg for so long. Why did I do it? I put down a deposit for a gun on 6/19/15, the church shooting in Charleston, And he says, as for Dylan Roof, you want a race war? And he said, bring it then, you white. And then, of course, there's profanity, and I can't use that on air here. But essentially, his manifesto is the actual rantings of someone who is clearly psychologically unhinged. Just to put it mildly, this person definitely had mental distress and needed to be treated, and maybe in an inpatient facility, psychiatric hospital, so to speak. But we're not going to know. It's just so sad to think that there are two people that are no longer in this world today because someone took it upon himself to vent out. And of course, we know who this individual is. We will not mention his name here because we don't want to give any unnecessary publicity or attention to someone who committed such a horrific act of violence. It is really unfortunate. Perhaps this individual, former employee of WDBJ7, had some type of grievances with Parker or with, the other individual as well. We're not really sure what happened because no one that did not know them personally will really understand what the relationships was that they shared with the gunman. But at the same time, there's obviously no way in the world we can rationalize his decision to take a gun and take the lives of two people the way he did so mercilessly. Our prayers, our thoughts, and our hearts are with Virginia, with the families, again, of the two young people who were slain today by someone who obviously was desperately in need of assistance and did not seem to care enough about either himself, his family, and anyone else for that matter. It is unfortunate that we live in a world where these kinds of things seem to happen, and at this point they're seemingly happening at a much more frequent basis than ever before. It is terrifying, to say the least. Not only are we astonished by the events of today, this senseless acts of violence, we're also just kind of baffled as to whom would think that this would be acceptable, that this is a solution to a problem that you had with people. A lot of times we have differences with coworkers. In many cases, there are people out there that have lost their employment for whatever reasons. But thankfully, most people don't choose to go back to the former place of employment and literally target the people that they feel have wronged them by choosing to take these people's lives. It's just unbelievable, disgusting, reprehensible. I mean, seriously, just not the way anyone wants to start their day, not what anyone ever wants to see happen to another human being, regardless of whether or not he or she is someone that you know. This should never happen to any soul. And we just hope that the families are finding strength tonight in the love that they have for each other, and the fiancée of Parker, who was truly living her dream as a 24-year-old who was climbing up through the ranks and been very successful in her chosen profession, that somehow, some way, her family and Adam's family will try to be strong during what is a very difficult time of sorrow and deep mourning. We thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so sorry that it had to be about something so horrific, but unfortunately it was one of those stories where certainly deserved some attention, deserved to be discussed. And seriously, it's so unfortunate that we know this person who chose to pull the trigger several times over will not ever see the inside of a jail cell or a lethal injection. But one thing is for certain. The gunman may have escaped justice in this world, but I would like to say I doubt very seriously that he will escape his just desserts in the next one. Thank you for listening again. This has been the Parker Assurance Show, and this is LM Love. I certainly wish that I could have come here tonight, with better subject matter, but unfortunately, the world we live in, things are not always peachy and they're not always perfect. On another note, I'd like to quickly just say that last week we lost a legend, civil rights activist and media giant Julian Bond. It's with very great sadness that we just wanted to acknowledge the passing of a man who truly did care about humanity. I think it is important that I close tonight with at least some positive message. Bond was a person who grew up during the civil rights era when there was a lot of racism that the gunman seemed to be expressing in his manifesto, and essentially, apparently or allegedly, this was the reason why he chose to pull the trigger on two defenseless people who were unarmed while they were working. Definitely not a scenario that is justifiable. Therefore, I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of someone who was a great man. Julian Bond definitely made the race of black people look acceptable and admirable, and he was everything that was honorable. Quite a juxtaposition to the actions of the gunman, who, yes, by the way, was black. He was a black American. So we'd like to take this time to extend our condolences to the Bond family, friends, and the treasure trove of his legacy that was phenomenal, that truly will have a lasting and positive impression on many lives, not only just those in the black community, but worldwide and also across any types of color lines. Maybe one day we will live in a world where things like color, ethnicity, etc. are simply just an actuality, but not something that anyone would choose to use as a reason for resorting to any form of violent act or mistreatment of any kind. Thank you for being here tonight. I truly hope that as you say goodnight to your loved ones, that you remember to live each day like it is your last one. When something happens like this that took place in Roanoke, Virginia today, it truly does bring home the fact that life is truly fragile and completely unpredictable, and tomorrow is not promised. Take care of yourself and each other, and love each other as hard as you can, as long as you can, and never ever leave each other angry. Ciao for now. This has been Ellen Love.